The alarm screamed across Firebase Echo as Apache helicopters thundered through smoke-filled skies. Colonel Mason Harlow barked orders into his radio, his voice cutting through chaos as the most classified military installation on the eastern seaboard went into full lockdown. Through the pandemonium of running soldiers and screaming sirens, a lone woman stood perfectly still at Gate 7. No uniform, no panic, just a worn leather jacket, faded jeans, and eyes that tracked every movement with surgical precision. Evelyn Stroud didn't flinch when the searchlights swept over her, didn't move when armed guards rushed past. She simply stood there, a small badge clipped to her belt, watching the base's defensive response unfold like a chess game she'd already won. Colonel Harlow spotted her through his tactical scope, and his face twisted with rage. Who the hell authorized a civilian on my base during lockdown? He stormed toward her, fury radiating from every step. But he had no idea that the civilian had already identified 17 critical security failures in his supposedly impenetrable fortress. And the convoy of black SUVs racing toward the gate wasn't coming for evacuation. They were coming for her. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button for Quiet Tales Studio and join us for more moments when true power reveals itself. The rain began as Colonel Harlow reached the gate, his boots splashing through puddles that reflected the base's emergency lights. Behind him, Firebase Echo buzzed with the coordinated chaos of a military installation under threat assessment. Though no one had told them this was just a drill, Eve stood motionless as Harlow approached, rain droplets running down her leather jacket. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, revealing a face that could have belonged to any suburban mother, any office worker, anyone forgettable. That was the point. "Ma'am, this is a restricted military installation," Harlow said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I need to see identification. Now." Eve silently pointed to the badge on her belt. Harlow leaned in, examined it, then laughed, a harsh sound that carried to his nearby officers. "Civilian oversight? Are you serious?" He turned to Major Connor Briggs, who had just arrived. "Look at this, Major. The pencil pushers sent us a babysitter during a code red." Several soldiers nearby chuckled. Eve remained silent. "Listen, lady," Harlow continued, raising his voice so his men could hear. "I don't know which bureaucrat signed your visitor pass, but this is a combat zone simulation. We don't have time for—" "Colonel," Lieutenant Riley Vaughn jogged up, her communication headset still active. She'd seen something on her screen that made her face pale. "Sir, you need to." "Not now, Lieutenant." Harlow waved her off dismissively. "I'm dealing with our civilian tourist." Riley's eyes widened as she looked at Eve, recognition dawning. She tried again. "Sir, that's not." "I said not now, Vaughn." Harlow's bark made the lieutenant step back. Eve's phone vibrated. She pulled it out, read the message, then looked at her watch. The gesture was small, casual, but something about it made the hair on Major Briggs' neck stand up. "Security protocols fascinating you?" Harlow asked sarcastically. "Maybe you'd like to file a report about how we're too mean to civilians during combat drills?" That's when they heard them. Engines. Not military vehicles. Something else. The distinctive purr of heavily armored SUVs with diplomatic plates. 3 black vehicles emerged through the rain, their headlights cutting through the base's chaos like knives through smoke. They moved with purpose, ignoring designated lanes, heading straight for Gate 7. Harlow frowned. "We're not scheduled for any." The lead vehicle's door opened before it had fully stopped. Agent Troy Callahan stepped out, his presidential security detail badge gleaming despite the rain. He walked directly to Eve, his posture showing deference that made every watching soldier freeze. "Director Stroud," Callahan said clearly, "POTUS is ready for your security assessment." The silence that followed was absolute. Harlow's face went through several shades of pale as he looked from Callahan to Eve, then down at the badge he'd mocked moments before. Now, with trembling fingers, he looked closer. The platinum edge, the presidential seal embedded in the design, the small inscription that read Lazarus Division, Level 9 clearance. Level 9. Higher than his. Higher than anyone's on this base. Director. Harlow's voice cracked. Eve finally spoke, her voice calm and devastating. Colonel Harlow, your base has been compromised. I've identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in the 12 minutes I've been standing here. 3 of them would allow enemy infiltration within the next hour. That's impossible. Our security is. Your perimeter sensors have a blind spot at coordinates I'm about to show you. Your communication encryption is using a protocol that was cracked 4 months ago. And Lieutenant Vaughn has been trying to tell you that your entire eastern defensive grid went offline 6 minutes ago. But you weren't listening. Harlow turned to Riley, who nodded grimly. She's right, sir. Eastern grid is dark. I tried to. Command center. Now. Eve's tone brooked no argument. Inside the command center, Eve transformed. The quiet civilian became a force of nature, pulling up classified schematics, highlighting vulnerabilities with expert precision that left seasoned officers scrambling to take notes. Your vehicle scanning protocol, she said, fingers flying across the tactical display, has a 12-second gap during shift changes. Here, and here. Red markers appeared on the map. Any competent infiltrator could exploit this. Major Briggs objected. Our protocols are tested monthly. You test them wrong. Eve pulled up footage from that morning. Your teams follow an unofficial shortcut that saves time, but creates vulnerability. Watch. The screen showed exactly what she described. This adaptation has become standard, but it's undocumented in your security reviews. The room fell silent. 2 weeks ago, Eve continued, I presented these findings to Pentagon leadership. They assured me the concerns were theoretical. She looked directly at Harlow. You were in that meeting, Colonel. You called my analysis civilian paranoia. Harlow's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. So I requested field verification. The President agreed. No advance notice to anyone, including base commanders. She paused. Especially base commanders. Captain Sloan Carter, head of base security, raised a hand. Director Stroud, the Eastern Grid failure. Isn't a failure. It's a test. My team disabled it remotely using the vulnerability I warned about 2 weeks ago. The same vulnerability you said couldn't be exploited. A secure phone rang. Harlow answered with shaking hands. Colonel Harlow. Colonel, this is Secretary of Defense Marshal Keaton. The voice on speaker was ice cold. Director Stroud has full authority. Whatever she says, you do. Whatever she needs, you provide. Are we clear? Yes, Mr. Secretary. Good. Because if her assessment is accurate, and it always is, you've been running a base that any competent enemy could infiltrate. We'll discuss your future after she's done. The line went dead. Eve turned to the assembled officers. Implementation begins immediately. My team arrives in 6 hours. You have 48 hours to fix every vulnerability, or this base gets shut down. As officers scrambled to implement her corrections, Eve noticed Lieutenant Riley Vaughn standing apart, taking meticulous notes. Lieutenant, Eve called out. You recognized me immediately, didn't you? Riley nodded. Yes, ma'am. I've studied Lazarus Division protocols. Your badge configuration is unique. And you tried to warn Colonel Harlow. I did, ma'am. Eve studied her. Your communication intercept reports from last month. You flagged the encryption vulnerability 3 times. Riley's eyes widened. You read those? I read everything. Your analysis was correct. Your leadership just didn't listen. Eve turned to Harlow. Colonel, Lieutenant Vaughn identified half these vulnerabilities independently. Her reports were buried in your system, marked as pending review. Harlow's face reddened further. Director Stroud, he said quietly, approaching her as others worked. I owe you an apology. No, Colonel. You owe your personnel better leadership, especially those like Lieutenant Vaughn who see problems before they become disasters. She handed him a sealed folder. Your complete assessment. 48 hours, Colonel. Outside, the rain had stopped. The convoy waited. Agent Callahan opened the door for Eve as she approached. How bad? He asked quietly. Salvageable. Barely. She looked back at the base. But there's talent here. It's just been ignored. Inside the vehicle, secure from outside ears, Eve finally allowed exhaustion to show. These assessments were necessary but draining. Playing the silent observer while systems failed around her, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. Her phone buzzed. Another base, another assessment scheduled for tomorrow. The president wants to know if Harlow will survive this, Callahan said. Eve considered. He'll either become the officer he should have been, or he'll be replaced by someone better. Either way, Firebase Echo will be secure. As the convoy pulled away, she thought about Lieutenant Vaughn. Sharp, observant, ignored by leadership. Eve made a note to track her career. The system needed more people who could see threats before they materialized. 2 weeks earlier, in the Pentagon's secure briefing room, Eve had stood before 15 senior officers, including General Dalton Mercer and Colonel Harlow. Her presentation on systemic vulnerabilities had been met with skepticism. Ms. Stroud, General Mercer had said, the civilian title deliberately dismissive. Your concerns are noted, but our security protocols have served us well for decades. Your protocols assume enemies will attack in ways you expect, Eve had replied. What happens when they don't? Theoretical, Harlow had interjected. Show me one actual breach using these supposed vulnerabilities. By the time I can show you an actual breach, people will be dead, Eve had responded. The meeting had ended with polite dismissal, but Eve had gone straight to the White House. Now, standing in the Oval Office for her post-assessment briefing, the president reviewed her report. 17 vulnerabilities, he asked, that I identified from outside. Inside analysis revealed 23 more. And Harlow's response? Shocked into competence. He'll improve or be replaced. The president nodded. Continue the assessments. How many more bases? All of them, sir. Every installation needs unannounced verification. You're not making friends in the military hierarchy. Eve's expression didn't change. I'm not here to make friends, Mr. President. I'm here to prevent catastrophic intelligence failures. 3 days after Eve's visit, Firebase Echo had transformed. New protocols, new equipment, new attitude. Colonel Harlow stood in his office, studying the changes with General Mercer. She humiliated you, Mercer said bluntly. She saved us, Harlow corrected. If an enemy had found these vulnerabilities first, you're defending her? I'm learning from her. Harlow pulled up a report. Sir, I'm promoting Lieutenant Vaughn to captain, placing her in charge of our new predictive threat analysis unit. The lieutenant who tried to warn you? The lieutenant who saw what I missed. Director Stroud was right. We ignore talent because it doesn't come with the right rank or appearance. Mercer frowned. This Lazarus Division is disrupting our entire command structure. It's evolving it, Harlow countered. Sir, with respect, when was the last time we questioned our own systems? Really questioned them? A knock interrupted. Captain Riley Vaughn entered, her new insignia fresh. Sir, Colonel Trent Maddox from Firebase Northern is on secure line. He wants to know how we're implementing the Stroud protocols. The what? Mercer asked. That's what bases are calling Director Stroud's security modifications, Riley explained. 7 installations have already requested our documentation. After she left, Mercer studied Harlow. You've changed. I've adapted, General. Director Stroud taught me something valuable. The most dangerous enemy is the one you don't see coming. And sometimes, that enemy is our own complacency. 1 month later, Brigadier General Mason Harlow stood before 26 base commanders, explaining the new security paradigm. Half had experienced Lazarus Division assessments. All had heard the stories. The old way assumed threats would announce themselves, Harlow said. The new reality requires us to assume they won't. At the back of the room, Evelyn Stroud watched quietly. Her work here was nearly done. The military was adapting, evolving, learning to see its own blind spots. Colonel Maddox raised a hand. General Harlow, how do we know these assessments are over? How do we know Director Stroud isn't watching us right now? Harlow's eyes found Eve in the shadows. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Colonel, that's exactly the point. We should always assume we're being tested, because in the real world, we are. Later, as the room emptied, Eve approached Harlow. General, she said with a slight nod, congratulations on your promotion. Director Stroud, I understand you recommended me. You earned it. Not everyone learns from failure. Fewer still transform it into strength. That first day at the gate, was I specifically targeted? Eve's expression remained neutral. What do you think, General? I think Lazarus Division doesn't do anything by chance. Then you've learned the most important lesson. She turned to leave, then paused. Phase 2 begins next month. New protocols, new challenges. Are you ready? I'd better be. You've taught us to expect the unexpected. No, General. I've taught you to see what was always there. 6 months later, Firebase Echo received another unannounced visitor. A young man in civilian clothes with an unremarkable badge. This time, the response was different. Captain Vaughn identified him immediately. Protocols activated smoothly, and the assessment found only minor issues. At Lazarus Division headquarters, Eve reviewed the report with satisfaction. The system was learning, adapting, becoming what it should have always been. Small changes, Director? Her assistant asked. The most important kind, Eve replied. The ones that save lives before anyone knows they need saving. She looked at her board. 47 bases assessed, 15 more to go. Each one a potential catastrophe prevented, a vulnerability closed, a lesson learned. Her phone rang. The President. Director Stroud, I've just received a disturbing intelligence report. Multiple bases reporting attempted infiltrations using methods similar to your assessments. Eve stood. Which bases, sir? The ones that failed your tests initially. But here's the interesting part. They all detected and stopped the attempts using your protocols. Eve allowed herself a rare smile. Then the system works. Your system works, Director. The Joint Chiefs want to expand Lazarus Division. Full autonomy, unlimited resources. Are you interested? On one condition, Mr. President. Name it. Captain Riley Vaughn transfers to my team. We need people who see threats, not just those who respond to them. Done. Anything else? Yes, sir. Phase 3. International installations. Our allies have the same vulnerabilities. A pause. That's ambitious. Necessary, Mr. President. Threats don't respect borders. Approved. Director Stroud? Sir? Thank you. For seeing what others couldn't, or wouldn't. Eve ended the call, and looked out her window at the capital city beyond. Somewhere out there were more bases, more blind spots, more leaders who needed to learn that the greatest threats were the ones that didn't announce themselves. The rain began again, soft against the window. Eve thought of that morning at Firebase Echo, standing in similar rain while Colonel Harlow mocked her. Now he was one of her strongest advocates, teaching others what she had taught him. Change didn't require force. It required the right pressure at the right moment, applied by someone willing to stand in the rain and wait for the world to notice what had been there all along. Have you ever encountered someone whose silence spoke louder than words? Someone whose quiet competence changed everything without anyone realizing until it was too late? Share your story below, and subscribe to Quiet Tales Studio for more narratives about hidden strength and the moment when true power reveals itself. Remember, the most important victories are often won by those who never sought recognition. Eve turned back to her desk. Another assessment tomorrow. Another base to secure. Another leader to teach that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room was the one you never noticed. Until it was too late to ignore them. The work continued. The work always continued. Because that's what Guardians did. They stood watch while others slept, seeing dangers others missed, preventing disasters others would never know almost happened. And somewhere Lieutenant, now Captain, Riley Vaughn was learning to do the same.